So as Taylor mentioned, I am a lawyer turned full-time travel blogger. I'm also an award-winning author and travel journalist. I've had bylines in outlets like Photos, Washington Post, Matador Network, Insider, and I was part of the Points Guy Travel Advisory Panel, the first one that was made in order to help better advise the site about different initiatives, different travel things, and get a DEI perspective. I'm here because in 2017, I took a 12 trips in 12 months challenge. So I had been living my 20s, putting my head down, working a lot, getting a lot of things done. And as I approached my 30th birthday, I realized that I had never really taken time for myself, right? To do something amazing and noteworthy. And I'd started traveling a little bit for birthdays late in my 20s, and I realized how magical that was. So on my 29th birthday, when I went to Athens, Greece, I decided, why make this birthday celebration just limited to this month, right? Why not spend that time, that year, really sending out my 20s in style, right? Doing something so memorable that I'd always remember, and taking one trip a month to kind of keep that feeling going with me, that enthusiasm that you get when you travel. So that's the only thing that it started out to be. Just take one trip, 1 month, and go through to, get excited about entering your 30s and a new chapter in my life. So I think we can all relate to having those kind of pivotal moments. I ended up taking 20 trips total. It was almost like an amazing race at the end, where I tried to fit in as many trips as I possibly could, because I really felt like that year of adventure challenge took a life of its own, right? I started to get so invigorated by the places I was going that I wanted to do it more and more. I ended up visiting 41 cities across 11 countries, all while working full-time as an attorney. So I was sipping a mojito in Cuba on Sunday afternoon, and then back in the courtroom at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. I was able to do all of this because of different strategies that I will be teaching you today. Some of the places I went to, I stood on both the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere at once, at the middle of the world in Ecuador. It's a really cool place. They have a lot of experiments with gravity there. You can see water flush 3 ways. And it was just really interesting to be able to say that I had done something bucket list like that. There's only about 12 countries that cross the equator line, and this is definitely the one with the biggest monument. I also went and finally saw the Grand Canyon, something so amazing here in the US that a lot of people sometimes overlook or don't get the chance to see. And it really is something that people from all over the world come to see. And we have in our backyard, easily accessible, and, feeling adventurous there, hiking. It was really, it was just a life-affirming experience. And that's what this whole journey ended up being. I held up the Leaning Tower of Pisa, while I was in Europe, and I took my cheesy tourist photos. I knew I wanted to go and frolic through the lavender fields of France. So I went and did that in full lavender season in July, when they have sunflower fields as far as the eye can see. And I found the real life places that Van Gogh painted. So that was such a wonderful experience. Mark, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat, and we will be doing a Q&A at about the 30-minute mark when I get through as much information to share. But I'm really excited that you already have feedback, and excited to hear your question. I was able to go on a mass ascension at the Albuquerque Hot Air Balloon Fiesta. This is the largest hot air balloon fiesta in the world. They have balloons of all different shapes and sizes, like Yoda or an elephant. And I went up with 300 other balloons at the same time. I definitely did not regret not being at work that morning. I also went to Cambodia and Angkor Wat, the largest, religious complex in the entire world, and saw the sunrise. It was incredible. And so I was able to fit so much in this year that after I finished, I started writing about it. I wrote for the Huffington Post on why I quit dating that year to focus instead on my travels. I found that my time was much better directed at finding flights and making accommodations and researching itineraries than it was swiping on dating apps. Like this, the ROI on travel was exponentially higher for me, especially as somebody that, was approaching 30. And I think as women, we have that specific stigma that the longer you go that you're single, maybe that there's something wrong with you. You're like your last one to be picked for dodgeball, you know? And so for me, it was very empowering to take that back and to say, instead of putting my worth into how I am with others, like I really want to invest in myself and make sure that I did something impressive of my own. That first birthday trip that I took, my birthday's January 3rd, it just passed. And so I took that trip solo, and I found that the best way to celebrate New Year's, which is an underrated holiday in terms of like how much stress it can cause you, right? Because you have all these, like, you want to have the perfect New Year's plan and bring in 2023 in style and start all these like new goals, new you. And I found that the pressure of that and the actual New Year's itself was waned when you were on an airplane and nobody even knows what time zone it is. There's no midnight countdown, like there's no pressure. It's just you starting the year with yourself, 30,000 feet in the air, heading somewhere on an adventure. And it's a great way to set your year off right. I also talked about how I regularly travel round trip for under $400 all over the world for the Washington Post with my flight secrets. I think we have somebody that just joined. Let's see. Sorry about that. And so I was able to do all of this and completely change my life. At the end of that year, I had used all of my sick leave. I had used all of my PTO. And I thought to myself, you know, do I want to stay in the position that I'm at as an attorney, or do I want to try to make changes? By this point, I was 4 years into blogging as a, you know, side hustle and hobby. And I hadn't really taken time seriously to learn how to monetize it. But one of the trips I took that year, probably the least romantic sounding one that you will hear, I took myself to Huntsville, Alabama to attend a blogging conference. And I paid more to go to Huntsville than I did to go to Europe. And I remember feeling extra bitter about that. And I ended up having the best time because I sat in on a travel writing class with, you know, a former editor for Nat Geo, and I was able to learn more about the craft. And I found that compared to the legal conferences that I'd been attending, that I had been dreading, that I had, you know, walked in late to the session, sat in the back row, doing other stuff on the internet, hoping nobody called on me or saw I wasn't paying attention. When I went to a travel conference, I actually wanted to sit in the front row. I actually wanted to pay attention to what was being said. I was taking notes and waiting to speak with people after. I felt so alive and excited about the prospect of what I was doing on the side, more so than what I was doing as my full-time job that I'd invested 7 years of higher education to get to. You know, I'd worked already in law for 5 years at that point, handled over 700 cases, and I just didn't feel it was it, despite that being the trajectory that had been set out for me. So now it's since been 4 years since I've quit practicing law, and I've been a full-time travel writer and author. And it all started because, thank you so much, Taylor. It all started because after that year, I decided to start betting on myself, to start investing on myself. I wrote my first book, The Affordable Flight Guide. It became a #1 Amazon bestseller in 8 categories, and it became a reader's favorite award winner. I remember, you know, my mom being like, how many people don't ever win an award, and you won an award like on your first try? Because I was bummed that it wasn't like gold or anything like that. She's like, you did great, like you won an award, be excited, write more books. And so I did. I wrote 5 books that I self-published. And then this year I was so happy to announce that a memoir about this entire experience is coming out in my first traditional book deal this fall. It was signed to Blackstone Publishing, and they paid me a 5-figure advance to write the book, and that it's going to be out hopefully fall 2023. I just finished the first draft last summer, and it seems surreal that in such a short time, I was able to take myself from a life that was confined to 4 walls and no windows and surrounded by my degrees, but not really feeling all that accomplished, to a life where I could tell the stories of people all over the world, that I could take my core skill set of writing and public speaking and apply that in a field that really impassioned me. And so whether or not that's your trajectory, I do believe that you can infuse your life with more travel, and that it all starts with that decision to make this year be different while you're invigorated, while you have that motivation. And I want to help you do that today. So we're going to cover why a travel challenge is so powerful. We're going to talk about PTO hacks so that you can get the most of your limited time off. We're going to talk about how to afford your travels. I'm hoping that with these, I can cover the two objections I get the most, which is I don't have the time to travel and I can't afford to travel. That's what I find keeps a lot of people from being able to travel more. And I'm going to give you that special bonus that we talked about. So first, why should you do a travel challenge? This is at the Underwater Museum in Cancun, by the way. You do not need a formal scuba diving certification to be able to do this. Since it's so shallow, you can do a mini PADI course the same day. So even if you haven't done this extensive diving training, you can actually still dive the Underwater Museum off the coast of Cancun. It's really cool. That is a Volkswagen down there and a bunch of other statues. It was just a fun experience, and I'm not even a professional diver. So a recent survey said that 80% of Americans need a vacation in 2023. And I definitely understand, especially, we're all really stressed out. We're all overworked. We're all overwhelmed. And there's something about displacing yourself, about just knocking your world off of its normal path and doing something different that can really change your perspective. It can make you feel alive again. It can make you feel more excited to go back to the routine that you were doing before. It can make you feel like your problems are not as big as you thought they were, because there's literally a whole world that lies beyond your current situation. And at a time when a lot of us are feeling down, I think travel is more important than ever to help you experience connection, to help you realize you're not alone, to help you realize that people halfway around the world are just the same as you are, right? And to see something marvelous, to see something that you can say, I'll always remember that I did this, versus, that Netflix binge again. I think it's just such a memorable way to mark your time. And 58% of travelers actually said they want to get out of their comfort zone next year. So they want to do something different. They maybe want to go to Jordan and see Petra that I did last summer. And I know I've had a lot of good response to those videos. Jordan is an epic destination. Maybe you want to go to Bali because you see all these flower baths and you know that it's, a digital nomad heaven, and you want to experience that too. Wherever you want to go, I want that for you. And so I think one of the best ways to infuse your life with more travel is to do a challenge. You're more likely to actually stick to a challenge once you announce it, because there's public accountability. So I like to go on platforms, Facebook, Twitter, keep up and post pictures as you go. Month 1 trip book, month 2 trip book. This is how I did it. These are pictures from the trip I took. Like, keep people updated, because you'll start to realize that people get invested in you. They get excited for you. And these challenges work for so many things, right? I've done reading challenges. I did a 30 blog posts in 30 days challenge when I wanted to really monetize my website and get serious about writing. So challenges are important because they give you accountability. You have set a goal and now you want to stick to it. And it's an attainable goal. We'll talk a little bit more about how in the next couple of slides. A challenge also focuses your attention. So now you're thinking about it, you're seeing signs everywhere, you're more attuned to things that you're seeing, like how to get affordable flights or all of these things that you're going to learn today. And you will be more focused on achieving that goal simply because you've stated it, you've set out to do it, and it's now a priority for you. This is also why marathons work really well for people, right? Because they train for it, they're preparing for it, they're doing it over an extended period of time. It's that same kind of idea. There's something psychological about setting your mind to a specific task, having a set deadline, and then embarking on fulfilling all the little steps it takes to meet that task. It's a kind of fun way to keep your brain busy and challenged and invigorated. And it also builds self-confidence, because confidence comes 100% from keeping the promises you make to yourself. It's every time you say you want to do something and then you don't get around to it. I know I've said a million times, like, I want to eat healthier, and then every year I don't, and I feel a little bit less confident about my ability to get back down to like 120 pounds in my dreams. So it really helps when you say you're going to do something and you actually do it, right? You feel so much better. I ran my first 10K this past year. Oops, says my internet's unstable. I'm in Puerto Rico, so if you guys lose me, just let me know, and if you can hear me in the chat or anything, and hopefully no issues here. But If you keep promises to yourself, you will feel better about yourself. I told myself I wanted to run my first 10K. I set out on a training schedule and I ran that in April, actually in Disney with a bunch of friends. It was really great. And that made me feel good about myself. It made me feel like I did something amazing for me. And I want that same feeling for you. So how do you actually get started? So plan your first trip. Start now. It's January. You still have maybe this upcoming weekend. You have a long weekend possibly for the MLK holiday, or maybe you have a weekend or a day trip that you can take to someplace even in your own city, in your own state. My parents live in New York State, upstate New York. Big life outside of New York City. And I think New York is one of the best states for just day trip exploring. I've made them come with me to the Genesee Country Village. It is like a village that's back in time in the 1600s, and like all kinds of different things that maybe you think, that sounds interesting. I don't know I could do it or not. Try it, even if it's something close, even if it's something easy. I want to emphasize that the trip does not have to be this big international endeavor, right? Like you don't have to be going halfway around the world for it to count. You will get the same effects and the same benefits just by stepping out of your daily routine, comfort zone, and trying something new. I also recommend you book things piecemeal. So if you do want to take a grand trip, like when I started my trip, I knew I wanted to do that France trip. I knew it had to be in July, and there was no flexibility with that. So I kind of booked things as I went. I first booked the flight. Then I looked to book the hotels. Then I looked to book the activities. I looked at it like kind of like a travel layaway thing where you're doing your own pacing as to what you're buying, starting with what the most pressing things are that are likely to go up in price, which is mainly the flight. And I will be sharing some flight secrets with you today. So much to cover, I gotta pick it up. So let's talk about PTO hacks. I like taking Fridays or Mondays off to have a long weekend. I think just having that 3-day weekend, if you can schedule it ahead of time, it's only one day, it's easy to tack on. Usually if it's not a major holiday weekend, it's not even that big of an issue. So this is a way that you can take a random weekend and just extend it. You can do short flights. Like if you're somebody that lives in the Southeast coast, like I got from Miami to Cuba in 30 minutes. So that you can find ways to travel not too far. Central America is pretty close to anybody in the south coast of the US. Europe is obviously longer haul, but if you do that red eye, you can get there in 6 hours overnight and still fit in like a 3-day city trip somewhere in Europe if it's nonstop, the flight. So think about it that way. It doesn't have to be that far, but if it is, you can still find ways to be creative and not really take that much time off to disrupt your work schedule. If you can plan a trip during a holiday, excellent. That's a great way to maximize your days, and we'll talk a little bit about that in this section. Use all of your leave, right? You earned it. So many people, specifically US people, because we value work above all else. So we make everybody feel guilty. You are guilty if you take time off. You are guilty if you request this. You need to be at your job every day. And you shouldn't be using your leave, and you shouldn't, you feel bad about it. And even when you go away, you still stay connected. So you're on a holiday and you're still sitting there making sure that you're checking, telling everybody like, I'll still be able to be reached via email. No, I am taking this day off. I am going to go, I will answer you when I get back. It really helps if you have something set up to cover that. So if you have a coworker that can step in case there's any emergency. I worked in a small firm, so I had a friend that I always went to, and if there was any emergency that came up, I knew that he would reach out if it really was something that needed my attention, or cover it if he could himself. Otherwise, I tried to take care of everything ahead of time. I made sure to email everybody, made sure to get everything done so that I didn't have anything that I expected to be on the calendar for when I was gone. And I encourage you, if you are calling out, if you're requesting time off, if you're taking a sick day, don't even bother trying to come up with crazy excuses. You don't have to be like, I have pink eye and I can't go into work today. Just request the time off, again, because it's time off that you have earned. It's part of your contract. I'm requesting to take these days off, or I'm calling out sick today. I won't be able to make it. Leave it simple. Because you don't need to over-explain yourself, and you shouldn't feel guilty taking time off that you are entitled to in your benefits, in your contract, that you've earned over the time you've worked there. Here's an example of how I would take the 12 trips in 12 months challenge in 2023. So in red, you have all the federal holidays, New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, you have Labor Day, you have Memorial Day, and then in blue, I have PTO, kind of an example of how you can spread out those days that you take off or request off so that one, it's not a large request that has to be granted at once, and two, that you maximize the days that you already have. And then in yellow, I have like 3 sick days that you take in the year. Again, if you've been working somewhere for a good amount of time, usually you have some sick days allocated. Maybe they're part of your PTO, but this is an example of how I would pull something like this off if I were to do it again. And then this is a hack that's been going around the internet. That's an example of how you can use the holidays to maximize your time. This is if you're somebody that wants longer time. So like if you take the time in between Easter and Good Friday, you should be able to get a good amount of days off. Same way on 4th of July. I actually did this for my France trip. The day 4th of July falls on a Tuesday and you have Tuesday off. So if you take Monday off, you only have to take that day off to have a 4-day weekend. So that's some ways that you can get creative with it. And keep in mind that even if this is something that doesn't apply to you because you work in a specific industry or your boss doesn't want to approve days off on holidays, you can still take that random Friday on a non-holiday weekend, get a 3-day weekend, and fly somewhere close to where you are proximity wise. So think about how you can get creative with it. Mark all the days on the calendar that you think you can take off and go from there, right? Go from what you have available. Now I want to talk about how to find cheap flights, because one of the main objections that I get is that people cannot afford to travel. And I believe that flights are the #1 impediment to world travel, because beyond that, you can find cheap places to stay. You can find cheap, street food. You can get around in a country for less, and depending on the country, obviously, but a lot of countries have that budget option. Whereas it's the flights that can be really cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So I have 3 guaranteed ways that you can find cheap flights, guaranteed. So first are flight alerts. These are programs that notify you when there's a deal, usually mistake fares, price drops, competitions between airlines. One of my favorites is Scott's Cheap Flights. I get about 5 to 10 emails a day from him. Like he's sending out $350 round trip flights to Milan, $250 flights to Mexico, things like that. So I'm always in the know when it comes to what flight deals are happening currently. I was using Scott's Cheap Flights back when I took my challenge, and I was able to get a mistake fare, $300 round trip to Argentina. So that was a really, not something that you see often. I've seen deals as low as $70 to Japan. So it helps when you have other people that are looking for flight deals, especially if you're somebody that just wants to let the deals come to you. This is different from tracking flight prices, though. So tracking flight prices would involve you putting in I want to see how much flights to Morocco are and notify me when they drop. That's a little bit different. And especially if you put in dates, it kind of lets that algorithm know what dates you're trying to go. So I'm sketchy of it. I like the Scott's Cheap Flights because they come to you, and it can be, for any place, and it could even be for first class flights. So you're not limited to economy. Your dates must be flexible when you're getting flight alerts. So if you're like, oh, I wasn't thinking of going to Mexico in June, but now I think I might since I see that really great deal. It doesn't necessarily have to be super far ahead of time. They can be for months out, so you can still plan with flight alerts. And I recommend you cast a wide net. I get flight deals from everywhere, not just my airport at San Juan here in Puerto Rico, because this is a small airport. It's not going to have the same kind of deals as JFK or Miami. And I know I can get to either of those, for less on any kind of JetBlue or anything like that, for probably under $100. So if there's a good enough deal, I'll get to that major airport. So try to see what major airports are near you, and don't limit yourself. If there's a good enough deal from New York, you can get to New York from almost anywhere in the US for pretty reasonable, and then go from there, depending on how good the deal is. Flying with budget airlines. Now, these are completely taking over. Before, it used to be Delta, United, American, right? Those are the main carriers. And now we have so many more airlines. So a budget airline has its pros and cons. You get low fares, a la carte pricing, so you would have to pay extra for the seat assignment and the food and the baggage that you're bringing. It is basic usually. Some people kind of are like, I would never fly Spirit, I would never fly Frontier. I will fly wherever is going to get me from point A to point B. I think all airlines have their issues. All airlines have had their issues. So there's no way that you can guarantee that your flight's going to go off without a hitch, regardless of, your preferred airline or things like that. It's if you have one, great, but otherwise I like to stay flexible. I'm going to go where the deal takes me, and I usually have travel insurance through my travel credit cards, which we'll talk about next. So for me, it's an easy win, especially if I find a good flight. I mean, I came back from Egypt now on Egypt Air, and then from Egypt Air to Puerto Rico with JetBlue, 2 different airlines. I did not look for a flight from Egypt to Puerto Rico. That would have been an insane amount of money. Whereas from Egypt to New York is like $400, $500, and then from New York to Puerto Rico, like $200. So it's much more reasonable. Here are some popular budget airlines you should know about. Ryanair, everybody knows them. They have SAS on TikTok, but also they have really ridiculously cheap flights. I have been told you are guaranteed they will make you cry at least once. However, they can get you anywhere in Europe for like €9. So maybe shed a tear and then eat while eating your pizza in Italy, right? Because I've gotten flights that I found, like let's say I can find a flight from New York to London for $300, and then I can get from London to like anywhere in Europe on Ryanair for another $20. I'm flying Ryanair. Other ones in the US, Spirit, Frontier, some overseas one, TAP Air Portugal to get you to like Portugal, Spain, that area. Air Asia to get you in between countries in Asia. That's how I got from Thailand, Cambodia, Bali, like in and around that area. So just don't be afraid to fly with budget airlines. If you know what you're taking, if you know your weight limits, if you book things ahead of time, you can still fly smart and get a deal. These are some new budget airlines on the scene. So Avilo, Breeze, Play. Play particularly has kind of taken the space of WOW. I don't know if anybody here remembers WOW. They were awesome. They had $99 flights to Iceland. That's how I went to Iceland for like $250 round trip from Miami. So Play has kind of taken their spot and is offering these cheap transatlantic flights. Same with North Atlantic Airways. French Bee can get you from anywhere in California to like Tahiti for $300. So these are all new budget airlines on the scene. I recommend you check them out. They are still around at least a year later, and they're working. Budget airlines are have to meet the same standards as any other airlines. It's not like they're less capable of flying, and it's really customer service and that a la carte pricing that maybe will have the biggest difference. So I think it's worth it when you can save the money and make these destinations accessible. Lastly, points and miles. Points and miles are amazing. They're how you get free travel. I just stayed 3 nights at one of the most beautiful hotels in Cairo, Egypt for free. I woke up on my balcony and I had the view of the pyramids of Giza for free. I paid nothing to be there, usually just taxes and fees. So this is a great way to get bucket list hotels, bucket list flights. If you have wanted to fly business class and the best business class in the world, if you want to stay at that overwater bungalow hotel, but you have no idea how you would afford it, credit card points and miles are here to the rescue. They're also amazing for when you have no flexibility on dates and you're going during a popular season. It can help you get somewhere and offset those costs. And done right, if you open travel credit cards, they can boost your credit score instead of hurt it. So how you do this, you sign up for a credit card, you meet the minimum spend threshold to get the points to get my hotel. For instance, in Egypt, I signed up for the Marriott Bonvoy card. I spent $3,000 within 3 months, and then I got 3 free nights that I could spend anywhere in the world. That is, they were up to 50,000 points in value, and it was worth a lot of money. And so I used that to save myself over $1,200 on those hotel stays. And I'm still accruing points. Now I have Marriott status as well. So there's a lot of benefits. And you get the added travel insurance. So if your flight is delayed, if your trip is canceled, I've used my travel credit cards to get reimbursed last year when I tried to take a trip to Egypt, but unfortunately my partner got sick and we couldn't go, and I was able to get reimbursed over $2,000 in those tour fees that I had paid that they were not going to reimburse me for, but my travel credit card did. So once you meet that minimum spend threshold, you get the bulk sign up bonus, you get your reward. And this is why a lot of people get hooked and open multiple credit cards so they can get multiple rewards and status everywhere and just travel like royalty. So points and miles are a great way to use your existing spending. Probably you're spending all those things on cards that maybe are giving you a cashback bonus. For me, travel is the best bonus, right? Like if I can redeem this for free flights, that's so much better than like any 1% cashback that I'll get on the spending on the card. So it's something that you see the benefits of immediately. Other ways to accrue points and miles are through shopping portals, online with airlines, online surveys like JetBlue lets you, if you're just sitting there watching TV, you can take surveys and get some JetBlue miles, and different promos and incentives like for signing up for their site. So to help you get affordable flights, to help you get past that biggest impediment, I have a free gift for you. I'm giving you a copy of the very first book that I wrote, The Affordable Flight Guide. It details exactly how I was able to get around the world for mostly $400 round trip on my year of adventure. And this is where you find it. So this is the link, bit.ly/affordable flight guide. And there's this QR code that I'll give you all a moment to screenshot if you want to open it. And that'll take you to the sign up page so that you can download your free copy of the book. And hopefully with that, I will expand more on any of those cheap flight tactics I just discussed. If anybody, we went through that quickly. I know it's a lot to absorb. So with the book, you can just kind of sit, take notes, and see what of that can apply to you. It also has a lot more secrets to help you travel for less. So hopefully, and even some bonuses to help you, make money on the side so that you can travel more. Hopefully this is helpful for you, comprehensive for you. I wrote this right after my year of travel. So it has everything that I know on the subject and how I did it. And that's it. Oh, we went a little bit over, but I think we're okay on time. So this is my contact information. If you want to reach out to me, you can email me at Jen Ruiz at jenonajetplane.com. My blog is jenonajetplane.com, and I'm on social, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, not on Facebook because I've currently been disabled. So my business page is live, but I'm going through some Facebook hacking issues because I was on that cruise ship Wi-Fi. So I do advise you to maybe stay off of cruise ship Wi-Fi, because let me tell you all, it's not worth this headache. And with that, I will stop sharing the screen and hopefully start taking your questions. I hope that was helpful. I'm gonna have some water.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. I definitely found some helpful tips in there. I know everyone else in the audience did too. If everybody could just give Jen a virtual applause, because we really, really, really appreciate you being here today. If you guys have any last minute questions, if you want to go ahead and pop those in, I'm going to go ahead and give Jen some of the questions you had. You guys had some really good ones too. So first, Sue wanted to know how you decide where you're going and how you manage your travel budgets.
Sue, that is a great question. So I like to decide where I'm going on where the deal is. That's why I like to stay flexible and sign up for flight alerts. I had no idea I was going to end up in Aruba, and that was my March trip, because I found a really great deal to Aruba on my first travel credit card, which was actually JetBlue. It had a really low minimum spend threshold, like $1,000. And I was like, okay, I want to try it. This feels low investment for me, like low risk. Let's try it. And so I used those points that I got with JetBlue to get a free flight to Aruba. And then I was like, okay, well, it wasn't on my mind, but let's see how it is now. And then I researched it and I found the cool things to do there. I went sea bobbing, which is like a underground or underwater fan that pulls you through the water. It's intense. Like I felt like James Bond a little bit, but I went through shipwrecks and swam with sea turtles and went on an island safari. I learned there's a whole desert inside of Aruba. So they have cacti and they have a labyrinth and all these really cool things. I had Dutch pancakes. And because I put Aruba on the radar, because I found that flight deal, right? So I would suggest that you remain open to where the deals can take you. One of my favorite hacks for this is going on Google Flights and using their Anywhere feature. So you just see the map and put your departure airport or airports, maybe a set date, or you just want to say like 1 week in August, and they'll show you what the most affordable places are. And so I love to stay open and let that pick me. Aside from the like hard, definitely I want to do this bucket list activities like being in the south of France in July for me. And in that case, that was something that I planned for far ahead of time, taking those 6 months leading up to that to make sure that I spread out the costs of that trip. And that leads into the second part of your question about budget. And so I was doing this when I started this trip. When I started the challenge, I actually also started teaching English online. I forgot to mention that. So while I was working as an attorney, I had my mornings that I would wake up early, like let's say 4:30 or so, and then I teach from like 5 to 8:30 in the morning and then head to work. And that allowed me to make an extra $1,000 a month approximately. I was definitely a little sleep deprived, a little cuckoo after a while. But it was a proof of concept that I could actually make money online. And it provided me that extra income that regardless of how many raises I had asked for over the years while practicing law, I'd say I got a $5,000 raise. I ultimately saw that came down to like $100 every paycheck. So it wasn't really meaningful in allowing me to accumulate that travel budget and have that, extra spending that I could use. So having that second part-time weird hours job that I could do from home and nobody would know, that actually really helped me. And there are a lot of websites that you can consider teaching online with if that's something that interests you. I do talk about it in the Affordable Flight Guide at the end, some ways to make money online. And I have a whole book dedicated to that as well, 25 ways to work from home. So hopefully that answers your question as far as budgeting and destinations.
I think it definitely does. And you answered a couple of the other questions that we had too. Some of the audience did want to know, do you still practice law at all? Do you do it on the side?
I had a lot of offers to do it on the side, actually. Especially because I had still been working in the last firm I was at. I'd been working for the firm prior on appeals for them. And so appeals would be these long, 50-page plus documents that I could do remotely and then they would submit. So I was kind of like ghostwriting that for them. I made a conscious decision to stop practicing law because it did not make me happy anymore. After handling more than 700 cases, and after seeing how easily I could make money doing other things like, teaching online, like blogging, I wanted to invest more in my own things. So I threw myself into how to monetize my blog. Already within a year of making that challenge, I was able to start making meaningful money from my website itself. And still now it's something that I struggle with because I'm always tempted, right? Like there's so many other ways that I could make money building other people's brands and doing things for other people. And I have to constantly remind myself that I can do it, right? I think it comes down to the fear of me not knowing if I can monetize my own channels, if it's sustainable. But it's been 4 years and I'm making twice as much as I did as an attorney. And I'm doing so on a time where I can set my own schedule, where I feel like I'm working really hard all the time, but also I'm doing something I love. And so I've had to make that clean break because I don't enjoy law anymore, and because I didn't want that to be holding me up from being able to go full in on what I do enjoy, which is writing, storytelling. And I found many ways to monetize that, whether it's freelance writing, advertisements, content creation, campaigns, a bunch of different ways that I can make money, book royalties now. And I wouldn't be able to do any of that if I was still focusing on law.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, do you have a lot of help? Do you use a personal virtual assistant or any other support for running your business that you would recommend to people that are trying to do the same?
I think don't be intimidated by, how much there is to do. I think you can take things one thing at a time. You can focus on one particular goal first. Like for me, my first goal to monetize online was writing and launching my first book. So I had to learn about self-publishing. I had to learn how to get that out there. And I could do that all on my own. But also now with the gig economy, you don't have to necessarily, I do have a team, but you don't necessarily have to start that way. You can start with just hiring people off for one-off tasks. Like I tried to design my own book cover and it came out really bad. And then I tried to go on Fiverr to get somebody to do it for like $5, and they came out worse. And so I ended up going with a designer that I found through 99 Designs, and they designed the book cover for me. And I've since used those designers to do something that I know that maybe I could do, but it's not in my zone of excellence. So I'll outsource and pay the $100 or so to have somebody do that one-off task. I still do that to this day with something like web development. Coding blows my mind. Like, I can know a lot of things about my website. I know search engine optimization. I know like social media marketing, but the actual nitty gritty of how to get the website to work, it's beyond what I enjoy. And so I actually like having somebody that I can bring on for specific projects, troubleshooting. And I think that that's a good way to start if you're somebody that knows that maybe you don't have all of the skills, but you also are scared about hiring a team, because then you have to sustain a team. So it's just, and don't think that you need a team at all to get started. Like I said, I self-published by myself. I know people that pay a lot of people to self-publish for them. But to me, the point of self-publishing is to make money, not to necessarily spend all your money before you have proof of concept. So, and that's something that I talk about separately if anybody's interested in learning more about that.
Thank you, Jen. And I do want to get back to just getting out there a little bit more and traveling. So one of the best ways that I thought that you recommended was to use your personal time off in combination with holidays and maybe some long weekends. So I saw a lot of the concern in the chat was maybe that the holidays tend to be a little bit more expensive or a little bit more crowded. So how do you navigate pairing those two together, those long weekends in combination with more expensive travel?
Absolutely. So first, not every place celebrates the same holidays that we do. Like Memorial Day and Labor Day mean nothing outside of the US. Those are US holidays. Same thing with Thanksgiving, right? You're thinking it's a big deal for holiday travel in domestically, but maybe international travel is not the same because it's not the same demand. Those people don't really care that this is the day that America was discovered. So same thing with 4th of July. It does overlap with like France's Bastille Day, I believe. So there are celebrations sometimes that overlap, and you have to keep that in mind. But usually for holiday travel, actually leaving the US is the better way to go, because those other places won't acknowledge the same holidays. That obviously doesn't apply for Christmas, New Year's, those kind of holidays. I like to book as far ahead of time as possible. So that's why I'm always keeping my eye out for deals. This flight that I booked recently, I went on a Mediterranean cruise, and I had to fly to Athens I flew on Christmas Day. So I find that people like to be somewhere on the actual holiday itself. That's how I ended up flying during my 12 trips of 12 months challenge on New Year's Eve, like during the midnight countdown, because everybody wanted to be at their place doing the midnight countdown. I did not care. I'm okay being on the plane. And that usually saves you about a couple $100 or so on that flight when you're booking during that busy season. So Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, the holiday itself that people want to be there. I was a little bummed because I missed like this big New Year's Eve celebration in Phuket in Thailand when I got there. But I was also totally okay because I was able to get there for way less than it might have been otherwise. So to summarize, book far ahead of time, if possible, maybe even use points or miles to get that free. Like I traveled and got those free points at the hotel with the view of the pyramids, because those were holiday fares and rates and they were super crowded. So for me, using those free point certificates was worth it for that time period, and do so on the actual holiday itself.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And so just as far as points and miles, when you recommended not necessarily staying loyal to one particular airline or brand, but that of course is going to be some of the best ways to sometimes obtain points and miles. So are there any specific practices that you would recommend on the best way to accrue those points without staying loyal? Or is there any particular card that shines to you that maybe you could recommend?
You can absolutely stay loyal. Like if you know that you're in Atlanta and it's a Delta hub and you want to only fly Delta, that's great. And the more you do fly with an airline, the more perks you get with them. A lot of airlines have made those perks much more harder to access now post-COVID, or in the latter years of it, because before they had made it so easy and they're like, everybody, please come take elite status, please fly more with us. And now they're slammed. And so they're like, we got to completely change these requirements. So it's become a lot harder now. And you see the benefit benefits of being loyal less and less. And so for that, I'm loyal to the prices, less so than the brands. I do, however, if you want to, and you know that you like them, and you want to reach the point where Delta's picking you up in a fancy car and taking you to your gate because you're so high up with them, then definitely do that. But otherwise, I recommend just taking a travel credit card that is for a brand that you're interested in. So my first one was JetBlue because I knew JetBlue flew a lot out of South Florida, and they had that low minimum spend threshold. So I wanted to test the waters. $1,000 in 3 months seemed pretty doable. You spend that between groceries and gas and insurance for things. Like, just think about all your existing expenses that you can redirect on that card for that period of time, and then you immediately see the benefits. Whereas I do like other advanced travel credit cards like the Chase Sapphire, Preferred or Reserve, different Amex cards that get you lounge access now and are one of the few ways to access it. Those are great, but they're also a little bit more complicated. You're dealing sometimes with transfer partners. It just can get to another level. So I think for the best quick win, pick an easy co-branded credit card, like that Marriott Bonvoy card that I got, that once I met the minimum spend threshold, I was going to get Marriott points, and Marriott has like taken over the world. I didn't even realize how many hotels are under the Marriott brand, but I stayed at Le Méridien at Cairo Airport, and both of those were Marriott nights. And so it's really easy to accrue benefits with them. It's a minimum spend, and it's, something, you'll use. If you want to take out the American Airlines credit card, that's how I got from Miami to New Zealand for $38. I took out the American Airlines credit card. I met the minimum spend threshold. I had a certain number of points, and then I found a flight to New Zealand that I booked through American Airlines with those points. I did not have enough points to fly round trip, and so I actually ended up flying back from Hawaii, because the Hawaii to Miami being domestic was much less points, much less than New Zealand, right? And then I paid out of pocket to get from New Zealand to Hawaii. So I managed to do the trip to New Zealand, get a 3-day stop in Hawaii on the way back. And I did all of this for like $200 or less than that. I think 100 something. I don't remember the exact amount right off the top of my head. But the flight to New Zealand with points and miles, I just paid the taxes and fees, and that was $38. So it was really affordable and a good way to get to these bucket list destinations.
Sure. Wow. First of all, $38 is amazing. So I know you have a lot more flexibility now because you are full-time traveling. But when you were working full-time, how did you manage such tight packed itineraries, being in one country next day and, you're in the courtroom, with not being able to always have so much time off? What do you recommend for such jam-packed itineraries?
This is not the time to be spontaneous, right? Like, everybody's like, oh, we just want to like kind of go with the flow. If you have a limited time somewhere, you do not have 3 hours to wait in line to get into the Anne Frank house. You have 5 minutes because you got your tickets ahead of time. You have them printed out and ready, and you can go straight into the line to bypass it. So as much as I love spontaneity and I love slow travel, if you have a short time and a lot to see, that is not the time to start figuring out where you want to eat at 7 p.m. that night. Like, you should have already researched that. You should have reservations at any restaurant that you really want to eat at, because maybe you get there and there's a huge line, or they're sold out for the night, and now I just think it helps if there's stuff you want to do, that you research ahead of time, you plan out your itinerary ahead of time, and you book things ahead of time. Museums, limited entry experiences, if you want to dine in the sky in Athens, you have to book all of this ahead of time, tours, things like that. So you know what you're doing, you have a set experience, and you can make the most of a limited time. I know that's not everybody's favorite way to travel. I actually also think that helps you if you're traveling solo, because you have an itinerary you can share with family and friends. People know where you're going to be and when they can expect to hear from you. You'll feel more comfortable if you've researched things ahead of time, because now you're not on the street lost trying to figure out what you're going to do next, right? Like, you are actually enjoying your time there and making the most out of that. So I recommend that you do that. I recommend that you plan as much as possible, and that you make sure that your schedule is jam-packed with activities that are meaningful for you.
Sure. Thank you. And I know you said that you just got back from Egypt, but we want to know, what is one destination that stands out in your head that you highly recommend? I know you spoke some really good things about Jordan, but like all time, I don't know if you can pick a favorite top destination for you.
I really have a hard time with that question because I think it depends on, what each destination was meant to experience. Like Jordan was super epic every day, felt like you're in an adventure. The south of France was so relaxing every day to smell. I can't remember the last time that I had ever just seen like flowers as far as the eye can see. Like most fields are very contained. You have like a certain farm, you can see the end of it, and this just felt endless. And so for me, that was so relaxing and so wonderful. And it was a big goal of mine because I'd always seen these pictures of the big lavender, and we have them in the US too. I had done an article for the Washington Post on finding France in upstate New York because they have lavender fields there, and they have French artwork in the museums, and they have, all these different foods that you can try that are by French chefs. So you can replicate the experience at home. But for me, that was something that it was a promise I kept to myself. I knew I wanted to make that trip. And to me, I felt extra accomplished when I was there. And I'll never forget the feeling of floating in the Gorge du Verdon, which is a lake at the end of what's considered the Grand Canyon of Europe. And it was like a Monday, and the water was so blue and the weather was perfect. And I'm just sitting here under the sky thinking, like, I can't believe that I'm here right now when I would otherwise be in an office. Like if I hadn't made this decision, I'd be sitting in the office just doing another day, eating something out of the microwave. And I'm sitting here now under this vast open sky, just enjoying this moment. I think that was the first time I ever felt legitimately at peace in like 29 years of life at that point, because I had always been working and going to the next thing. And so that being forced to actually relax and take it in and be like, wow, this feels different than what my normal operating procedure is. I think that was very memorable for me and part of what hooked me to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jen, thank you so much for taking the time. We did definitely go a little bit over, but thank you for staying and taking the time. I think everyone found value in this presentation. I do want to ask you, just before we end this chat, if you wouldn't mind putting that QR code back up for us just one more time for that goodie for everyone. I think there was a couple people that had an issue with it. So we're going to just put that back up just so we can make sure everyone has access to it. And of course, guys, I want to invite you guys to connect with Jen online. If you have more questions, you can always email her or message her.
I tried to fit in as much as I could in this time period. I know it's a lot of information, but what I want you to come away with is that this is something that is possible for you too. I really encourage you to think of the ways that you can infuse your life with more adventure, more travel, more keeping promises to yourself of something you've always wanted to do. I know that if you do this challenge, if you embark on it, and I know a couple people who have started already this year, your life will feel different by the end of it. You will have these beautiful memories and you definitely won't regret it. So thank you all so much for coming here today.
Thank you, Jen. And you've really given us so much value to the community. So we really appreciate you. For everyone else, I do have just a couple quick announcements. Jen, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Everyone, just another second to grab that code. So I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the upcoming events that we have coming up. So there's a few more for this month. January 17th, we have Matt himself, some lessons from Nomadic Matt, learn from the 15 years of blogging. I think that's going to be a great event for anyone that's interested in that. On January 19th, launch your dream business in 90 days. I'll be there hosting for that as well. So I hope to see you guys. And then we've got another great event for January 24th. A couple meetups here. You can go on our website to see if there's anything in the area, but something really excited I wanted to talk to you guys about is our group tours that we have coming up. I was really excited when Jen mentioned Jordan, because that is actually one of the trips that we're hosting a couple times this year. If you haven't seen it, there is a giveaway going on our Instagram. So make sure you check that out. There's also some other really cool destinations. We've got Turkey on there, a couple Mexico destinations. So make sure you check it out if you are looking for some travel friends. And if you don't know, last Wednesday of every month is our book club. This month is Travel Mania, Stories of Wanderlust. So if you haven't picked it up, of course, it's on Amazon. While you're on Amazon, make sure to check out Jen's books. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for coming. If you're not already a part of our TNN Plus community, make sure you check it out if you enjoyed this presentation and you would like to get more replays from us. Thanks again, Jen, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.